first session after lunch. We have to deliver to keep people energized.
Yeah.
Well, we try our very best.
Time to awake from the Suppenkoma, as we say in Germany.
Yeah. So, let's get started. My name is Simon Jake. I'm the head of corporate digital business innovation of the Freudenberg Group. And I'm here with Mika Langhorst from our consulting partner, Read on IT. And we would like to give you an on-the-ground experience report on how we at Central IT of the Freudenberg Group replaced our Solution Manager with Cloud ALM in a context of an integrated transformation suite approach. So the title basically says it all. A few words about the Freudenberg Group. We are a global manufacturing company, actively in many different market segments, such as seals, vibration control, technical textiles, filter cleaning, and much more. Mainly B2B, and in the order of 12 billion annual sales. A few words about Ridon.
Yeah, so we are a rather small consulting company specializing in both SAP and Microsoft, so I'm representing the SAP part, of course. One of our core competences is in the ALM environment, as you can also see on the slide. Apart from that, we are doing IT strategy and process consulting, architecture consulting, also training and coaching. So yeah, we are located in close to Karlsruhe in Stuttgart, and yeah, actually servicing all industries and all sizes of companies. So
let's get in our journey, and it begins actually 2 years ago at this very spot. I was a guest in the ALM Summit 2022 here in Mannheim, and I came to learn more about the current state of Cloud ALM and see how it is, how it performs. And at that time at Freudenberg, we wanted to investigate how we could deliver faster in our SAP ecosystem. On Tuesday, I learned a great metaphor for that, the Wielandschreiner washing machine. I don't know if you remember that from the keynote. So we wanted to get a washing machine up and running. That is a closed loop of continuous innovation. And so starting point from a technology perspective, we've been using S4 for quite a while. We were one of the early movers of migrating to S4 on-premise several years ago, and we used Solution Manager to manage that for operation, for ITSM, for test management. No charm. We used, additional to that, a little bit of Signavio, but more in a way like you would use Microsoft Visio, just an authoring tool, so no integration, no repository, and whatsoever. And actually, we had no established enterprise architecture practice or tooling in that area. So that was the situation we were in, and you might know what happens next. So usually in IT, then there's initiative, so let's change a business process just a little bit. But without transparency and as is, and without a way to really determine and discuss the necessary changes from as is to be, you usually fly it blind, and usually that means fire. But of course, that's not all. It's not about one particular business process. It's more like we live in times of continuous change, and also the digital landscape. So we as IT are responsible for continuously changes. And if you try to do that without proper tooling and without proper processes, you will experience that. Constantly something explodes. And it can actually get worse than that. So, of course, when then SAP sales talk to IT decision makers, ideas come up, and then you get something like this one. Can't we do just implement an S4 public cloud system in half a year? And without all the structure, you have basically a meltdown. And of course, it's a little bit of exaggeration, but I think you get the idea. So you need a proper foundation to really do that. And apart from individual peoples and companies, I would say you can see trends in the industry, in enterprise IT. So these trends are usually well known, but it's a summary for these. So IT landscape has changed a lot from individual boxes you can run and manage with Solution Manager to a more distributed network of integrated components on BTP or wherever in the cloud platform. And of course, that brings in additional IT operation challenges. Another trend is like companies are more managing their digital landscape and their digital assets in a more decentralized way. So there's a trend away from centralized IT departments, I would say, to do a more decentralized approach, so that business departments actually own software as a service or software assets or data assets or processes. So what you get is an IT governance challenge. Overall, I think in the most industries, markets are becoming more competitive and business models are changing more quickly, so you get also an enterprise architecture challenge. So usually infused by that change or also by other things happening in companies like a high employee fluctuation, you have the problem that you want to evolve your processes continuously, and due to employee fluctuation, you have to also train a lot of employees, so you have also a business process management challenge. And of course, we know that from when I think we are all experts in the digital area, so digital technology and products are also changing rapidly and have an ever shorter period of use. It's also an IT architecture challenge. So we have a lot of challenges, a lot of change happening, and I think this change is still accelerating. But our tools and practices we used back then was not designed for this high level of change. And what do you get out of this? Mess everywhere. So we knew that we have to do something differently. That was clear. And actually, we also had a feeling that the combination of Signavio and LeanIX and Cloud ALM would probably help us. But it remains a huge challenge for us to get started with this tool to really get value. So questions like, what does the overall architecture look like? What will I do where in the future? What integrations do I need between the different tools and systems, and how do I do the setup? How can I put all these steps I have to do in a sequence to really get going? And of course, who can help me with all this? So we knew that we needed help in that, and we found help in the person of Mirko.
Thanks. Yeah, so I'm just now about to explain you in some more detail, but also scratching on the surface how we proceeded, how we tried to help Freudenberg, Simon's team. So, yeah, Simon just referred to last year's ALM Summit, and actually this slide is taken from last year's Summit because that was actually the starting point of our discussion. So when we first met, got into contact, we were discussing that this is actually the vision also for Freudenberg. So that's what they are aiming at. They want to reach this business transformation suite approach. Simon already mentioned that almost all of the tools mentioned on the slide were already available at Freudenberg, but it was like loose ends and a bit unclear how they can attach to each other. So here again, as the long-term perspective, what they are aiming at is an integrated tool chain where all these tools and functions actually interlock with each other. So that's what we are aiming at. But as I just said, so that's more in the future, and we now try to bring a bit more structure in that to define a transition strategy and a roadmap with and for Freudenberg to actually reach this goal with a couple of steps before. So as always, every journey begins with the first step, and that's what we defined together. So what is the first step on this journey towards the business transformation suite approach? And our first step, or our first phase, we defined is the transition from SAP Solution Manager to Cloud ALM. So the reason for that actually being that we said, or that we deemed this task as one of the most difficult steps, considering that Solution Manager is an on-prem legacy system, whereas all the other systems that come into play in this big picture are SaaS solutions. So how did we proceed? Actually, that's part of our transition planning service, where we follow a staged approach. So this staged approach consists of several steps. So beginning with Solution Manager as the starting point, first step is a capability assessment that we usually do with a customer. Then an impact evaluation based on that. Next thing is a transition strategy definition, and eventually the actual execution of the transition project, so that you end up then in SAP Cloud ALM. So I will now go into a bit more detail when it comes to these 4 steps or stages, starting with the capability assessment. So we use the readiness check provided by SAP as a starting point to do the assessment of the capabilities used by Freudenberg. So we had the readiness check results, which you can see here. So that was the result at that point in time when we did first the execution of the readiness check, just to get a better feeling, what do they actually use, what do they have in the system. So that was a good starting point for us to see where we need to dig deeper and to talk to the responsible persons from Freudenberg to find out how is it used and what needs to be safeguarded and what does it look like in Cloud ALM. Is there a capability that sort of replaces what they were using in Solution Manager and so on. So as most of you probably know, that's split up into an implementation part and an operations part. So we took a look at both just to find out what they are currently using in SAP Solution Manager. So here, for the sake of this session, I cannot go into too much detail, but to sum up what we learned from the readiness check, how it helped us with just a couple of bullet points here. So as I already mentioned, the readiness check is really an excellent means to lay the foundation for a future analysis and to dig deeper, as I already said. So based on what we learned from the readiness check, we had some more deep dive sessions with the responsible persons, which we then incorporated into the transition roadmap. So for us, it was really helpful to quickly and easily get a better understanding of the customer, because Freudenberg was a totally new customer to us, so we did not know what they are doing from the past, and there that was a really good jump start into the starting situation of Freudenberg. The readiness check also gives you valuable input for the definition of the scope for a data transfer, which we will also cover a bit in more detail in the next couple of minutes. And I think what you said from the customer perspective, that the readiness check really helped to slice the elephant into manageable pieces. Okay, so let's continue with the second stage of our approach. That's the impact evaluation. So here again, based on the results of the readiness check, we defined that we will first of all focus on all the relevant capabilities that are available also in SAP Cloud ALM. So that was what we were focusing on when we followed up with the discussions to eventually define the transition strategy, and based on that, the roadmap for Freudenberg. So what we found out, or what we defined as the focus areas, is first of all the monitoring part. So Freudenberg relied on monitoring use cases in SAP Solution Manager. And our aim then was to transfer that to Cloud ALM, knowing that the operations part is quite mature already in Cloud ALM, and that for all the functionalities, all the monitoring use cases that Freudenberg used in Solution Manager, there are also capabilities in SAP Cloud ALM. So namely, that's the system monitoring, health monitoring, integration and exception monitoring. You will see that also on one of the next slides. And as another focus area, we had the topic of test cases. So knowing that Freudenberg will aims at continuing using existing test cases, the transfer of the already existing test cases was one of the additional tasks that we had to manage. And on top of that, the definition of a plan for all the other capabilities that Freudenberg wants to use in the future. So that's still something that's on the roadmap, but which we've not covered yet in all the details. Okay, so before we take a look at the next step, I'll just give you an overview of the steps we already completed and what we learned from that. So that's actually the fourth stage that turned out during the execution of the project. So first thing is that we did repeated execution of the readiness check. So repeatedly, mainly because SAP provided new versions of the readiness check, which then included additional information. So From my point of view, one of the most important changes was the introduction of the selective data transfer part. That was not existing when we did the readiness check at the first time. And once SAP released that, we did the execution of the readiness check again. Next thing we did is the SAP Cloud ALM for operations part. So as I already said, that's about the transition of the monitoring use cases, which we'll see on one of the next slides. Then the SAP Cloud ALM for implementation part. So as I just said, so there we mainly focused on the identification of relevant test cases and also on the migration options that exist to transfer the test cases. And we also took and are still taking place in the pilot project for the selective data transfer. So yeah, here again, I've mentioned it a couple of times, that's one of the newer versions of the readiness checks where you can see also the result of the selective data transfer part at the bottom right of the screen that we used also to get a better feeling of how many documents and test cases do exist in Solution Manager. And based on that, we still need to do the final decision which of these need to be transferred. And when it comes to the operations part, we first of all provided an overall overview to Freudenberg just to showcase what's possible in this area, what kind of monitoring use cases they can benefit from, and then did the prioritization based on the usage that they had so far in Solution Manager. As I said, so they were using system monitoring, which is now the health monitoring in Cloud ALM. They were using job monitoring, which is more or less the same, so job and automation monitoring, and the interface monitoring is now known as integration and exception monitoring in Cloud ALM. And one of the next things we did is the connection of the first cloud services, so that's not the full variety of cloud services that Freudenberg has in place, but we started with a subset of cloud services, which you can see on the slide, so mainly Analytics Cloud, the Integration Suite, SAP Workzone, and the IAS. Okay, so I already mentioned the topic of test case migration. So there again, we did a detailed analysis to find out which of the test cases they are currently using in so-called integrative test change. We did a summary and a discussion regarding the identified findings and challenges in the area of test management, because we found out that Freudenberg used to use some functionalities in test management which do not yet exist in Cloud ALM, which is basically something like result attributes or the tester groups. So there we needed to find a solution. And as I already said, we discussed different options how to move over the test cases from Solution Manager to Cloud ALM. That's still an ongoing task so that we have a final set which needs to be transferred. Okay. Maybe just a couple of words on the selective data transfer. As I said, we are part of the pilot project. So there are different work packages that we took part in, starting with the readiness check that I've already mentioned, which gave us just a feeling of the number of test cases to consider. Next thing would just be to find out when will it be possible to upload also the test steps and so on. So as one of the options that exist, but we also discussed other possibilities that will help us to move over test cases from Solman to Cloud ALM. So with that, I think I can hand over back to Simon, who will give you an outlook what's up next in this area, how we want to continue in our common project.
Yeah, thanks. So we achieved a lot, I would say, but of course it's not the end. And what are we trying to tackle next? So maybe one observation about that. So why did we start with a solution manager? You might ask yourself. And as I said, we have a bigger vision, a bigger transformation suite vision. I think it would be easier to start with something like Signavio or LeanIX instead of Solution Manager. But we deliberately took Solution Manager to somehow overcome the organizational inertia. So there was a reluctance to change, I would say. And we overcome it actually by just killing Solution Manager. That was the idea. So that made I think that the setting more staged for the innovation to come. So that was the idea, kill Solution Manager to have a better platform to innovate further. And now we can build on top of that in an agile way. And of course, we want to use a lot of Cloud ALM features which are they are not used so far. For instance, the business process monitoring is something we tackle first, and also business service management, so going up the stack, so to say. We have also much work ahead of us in terms of monitoring BTP services. Mirko said we integrated some of the services, the more software as a service-like services, but we have a lot of extensions on BTP, and of course, these should be monitored as well, and right now they are not under central monitoring. So this is also one thing we want to investigate in the area of operations. Implementation, yeah, test case migration, it's true, but I learned a lot in the recent days about test management, and maybe we have to iterate again what our approach here is. And the question is always, does it make sense to invest that much in bringing over test cases which might be not relevant anymore? So because the systems under test also change a lot, and I think it's fair to say that it's not always the case that the test cases are reflecting these changes of the system under tests. So the question is always, isn't it better to really start fresh? And maybe we will do that with all the automation capabilities I learned in the recent 2 days here to generate test cases out of business processes. I really like a lot. Additional topics we want to investigate, of course, now the bigger vision of the transformation suite come into play. So landscape discovery of LeanIX is top of mind, and process mining with Signavio is top of mind. We did there already a lot. We're using process insights and process intelligence with plug and gain, and want to invest there further. And of course, the overall integration thing needs to happen as well. So we have some integrations right now, but I would say there's still room for improvement to really connect these three components in a nice way. And probably will also connect the fourth kit, so to say, which is more an ITSM tool. So that's our near goal, I would say. Of course, I think from a report like that, it makes sense to also mention a few challenges we came across. Maybe you could help us to overcome these, or maybe you have an idea of the same challenges. The first one becomes increasingly, so the first question we always dealt with was the question, okay, what will I do in which tool in the future? And it became clearer also in the recent days to really decide which technical capability will be also from a product strategy perspective in which tool. But I think there's still some gaps to close. 2 examples about that. So when you think about security monitoring, for me it would be the natural place to have that in Cloud ALM, but it's not there. There's a different product for that, enterprise threat detection, which is, from my experience, not even a good product, to be really honest with you. So from my perspective, it might be worth to think about, does it make more sense to have it really in Cloud ALM? But in the end, security monitoring is monitoring. So you have signals, you have rules, you have some tasks. It's actually the same. Also, maybe the people involved are a little different, but for me, it makes sense to have it more integrated in Cloud ALM, but today it's actually not. Second observation is, if you think, process mining, so gathering data out of running processes. So this can be done with Signavio process mining, of course. You can even in process intelligence to react to certain numbers. So you maybe find out that a process is fluctuating a lot, and you want to define a threshold when somebody gets informed. You can do that in the Signavio suite, but you can do that actually also in business process monitoring in Cloud ALM. And the question again is, so, okay, where should I do it? Where should I invest? And actually, there's a fourth option in S4. You can even do it with S4 situation handling as well. So here again, you have, I would say, the same goal, and you have 3 options. And of course, it's always hard to decide which will be also the option SAP will prefer and will invest in the future. The second challenge we had a lot, I would say it's a little bit of skill gap. So in our experience, even with SAP consulting, they are a little bit reluctant to use really the transformation suite in the project. So we had an S4 public cloud project and did fit to standard sessions and ask our consultants, so can we do it using Signavio and Cloud ALM? And they actually said no, not planned to. So it's not no finger pointing against SAP. I think in general one could say that, of course, now we have a lot of new possibilities and capabilities from a technology perspective and a tool perspective. Of course, it's important now that the knowledge also gets more broadened and that each and everyone involved in these projects know about the tools and how to apply them in the context. And of course, these conferences like this one is the perfect action item for that, to really do that. So, to sum it up, one could say, okay, the transformation suite approach with Cloud ALM in the center is really the perfect fit into our IT long-term strategy. That's exactly what we need to continue to become more faster and more robust, and we want to invest there a lot. I would also say Cloud ALM, Signavio, LeanIX have continued to develop very well. When I compare 2 years ago, I think that was clear that there are still a lot of things missing, but I would say now today it's perfectly also for today's use cases and challenges. As I said, it's hard to find experienced people. There is a visible skill gap, not so much with the specialist here in the room. I think we can call ourselves a little specialist in the area, but of course, what you want to achieve is to bring more these tools also to business departments. That it's not only IT roles involved, but also more business people. And of course, there's a huge challenge to really educate these people that they can really use the tools to achieve their goals. To say that also again, I think killing Solution Manager and start with Cloud ALM for operation was, from our experience, the good starting point to really get going. And okay, still, sometimes SAP strategy is a moving target, but we know that. It's nothing new. It's part of the business. Okay, so thank you very much. This was our experience so far. I think we have a lot of time to answer questions. I think that was our goal, that we have really the time, because these experience sessions really live from also question and answers and also comments if you want to. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Are there questions in the room? So we deliberately saved some time for a Q&A session. Speed it up a little bit. If there's nothing right now, I mean, you can see our QR codes on the slide. So we're also happy to discuss with you later on, or maybe the next couple of weeks. But if there's anything, if you're in a similar situation, have any questions right now, don't hesitate. Raise your arms. We're happy to answer your questions. Otherwise, I would say you saved a couple of minutes. You can grab another cup of coffee maybe, and then you're good to go to the next session. So thanks again for coming, and enjoy the next couple of days.